Welcome to the Daily AI News Digest Explainer for May 16th, 2026. Sponsored by bestai.org, we're bringing you the unvarnished realities of the global AI sector today. I'm your host. Right now, the market is in a massive state of transition. We're officially moving past the early generative AI hype and colliding head-on with the friction of global deployment. We're talking corporate maneuvering, real economic strain, and a highly complex security environment. Let's get right into it. Here are today's top headlines. We are tracking a looming legal showdown between Apple and OpenAI, oil spiking to $106 a barrel, and a massive supply chain attack that's hitting developers hard. Starting with our lead story today, the fraying alliance between Apple and OpenAI. So that 2-year-old alliance that was supposed to completely define personal AI, well, it's officially fracturing. Reports broke late last night that OpenAI is preparing legal action over their ChatGPT integration on iPhones. And the language being used here is severe. This isn't just a standard contract renegotiation. OpenAI lawyers are actively exploring options to send Apple a formal notice alleging breach of contract. This is all being driven by deep dissatisfaction over how their technology is essentially buried within Siri rather than being front and center. The bottom line here is a fundamental clash of corporate interests. You've got OpenAI on one side demanding aggressive monetization and prominent placement to drive their premium subscriptions. Plus, they are highly threatened by Apple's recent Google Gemini deal. Then, on the other side, Apple is prioritizing on-device privacy and an open multimodal ecosystem. Add to that the fact that OpenAI has been aggressively poaching Apple hardware engineers right after their $6.5 billion acquisition of Jony Ive's hardware firm. So these two are really no longer just software partners. They're rapidly becoming hardware rivals, fighting for control of your primary device. Moving over to the markets desk, the AI rally meets macro reality. The AI-driven tech rally that really defined the year collided violently with geopolitical reality yesterday, and that physical constraint is captured perfectly by one number: $106.68. Brent crude just spiked past that mark. With the Strait of Hormuz largely shuttered due to the ongoing US-Iran conflict, the market is suddenly realizing that this isn't just a temporary price shock. It is a sustained physical supply constraint. And this constraint is sending shockwaves straight through equities. The Nasdaq dropped 1.54%, while the semiconductor index tumbled a full 4%. U.S. producer prices also rose 1.4% monthly, strictly on the back of these energy costs. This is reviving inflation fears and pushing the probability of a late 2026 Fed rate hike to almost 37%. Crucially, these higher borrowing costs are a direct threat to the massive capital expenditure boom required to actually keep building out all this AI infrastructure. Over on the technology desk, we're looking at the shift to architecture and agents. As hardware bottlenecks tighten, we're seeing the industry firmly pivot from raw scale to architectural efficiency. For instance, OpenAI just swapped their default model, making GPT 5.5 Instant the new standard, to cut high-stakes hallucinations by over 52%. Concurrently, upstart Subquadratic introduced a preview model that abandons traditional transformers entirely. They're claiming a massive 12 million token context window, though, to be fair, those vendor claims still await independent benchmarking. We're also tracking a really intense divergence in how these models are built and monetized. Zyphra released an open-source model, Zaya 1.8b, which is notable for being trained entirely on AMD hardware. That signals some very real independence from NVIDIA. Meanwhile, on the premium side, Elon Musk's xAI aggressively entered the coding agent race with Grok Build, its proprietary, terminal-based tool featuring an automated arena mode to score AI outputs, but it comes priced at a steep $300 a month. Next up, the cybersecurity desk, frontier threats, and the mini Shai-Hulud. As developers are rushing to integrate all these powerful tools, their supply chains are currently under siege. The immediate crisis today is the mini Shai-Hulud worm, which has already compromised over 170 packages. Basically, attackers hijacked GitHub Actions using stolen tokens to inject payloads into highly trusted ecosystems. That even includes Mistral AI's official SDK. For enterprises, this means a simple, routine download can quietly poison development environments and exfiltrate credentials across decentralized networks before anyone even notices. Simultaneously, the threat landscape is being driven by the models themselves. Anthropic has actually placed an indefinite hold on its new Mythos model. Red teaming revealed it could autonomously discover zero-day vulnerabilities across major operating systems. Recognizing the massive systemic risk there, Anthropic formed an industry consortium to silently patch the flaws it finds. Meanwhile, OpenAI has launched a parallel defensive initiative of their own called Daybreak.
Finally, turning to the geopolitical desk, the Beijing summit.
The intersection of technology, trade, and energy really took center stage as the Beijing summit between U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping concluded yesterday. Now, officially, both sides emphasized cooling tensions. China cited establishing strategic stability, and the Trump administration touted new, fantastic trade deals. However, independent analysis indicates Beijing remained mostly noncommittal on structural economic issues and stood absolutely firm on its red lines regarding Taiwan. So, we're seeing a widening gap between diplomatic optics and economic reality. Despite these surface-level agreements on AI guardrails, technological decoupling is actually accelerating. Advanced chips like NVIDIA's Blackwell series remain completely locked out of Chinese markets. In response, China is aggressively dominating the AI services sector, currently running a $238 billion services deficit with the U.S., and with no clear diplomatic resolution to the Strait of Hormuz crisis, the macroeconomic pressure on the global tech sector remains fully intact. That wraps up our daily AI News Digest Explainer for today. We've seen corporate alliances fracture over hardware control, global markets stumble on physical supply chain realities, and AI models grow so intensely capable that they literally have to be locked in a vault. As these overlapping forces reshape our world, the underlying question remains, are we setting the parameters for this technology, or is the massive infrastructure required to run it now dictating our geopolitical reality? Something to think about. I'm your host. Thank you so much for joining us.